So, what are we going to talk about first? I think we should probably talk about Henry Cavill, shouldn't we? Leaving The Witcher, because that kind of came out of nowhere, but also didn't come out of nowhere. So, Tom, what are your thoughts on this, mate?
Well, here's the thing. I noticed a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, clearly he quit The Witcher because of Superman," and that I saw as a big no. He quit Witcher months ago. Otherwise, they wouldn't be announcing his replacement already.
Mm.
So yeah, we released a video on it, and I agree with Andre's take that this is something that's been done a while ago, and a lot of it probably had more to do with I can't remember the name of the writer, but there was a guy who did an interview. Was that who it was? Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
and he had
he's
worked
the
on the
new up and
show.
comer with Marvel now. He's
Yeah,
the
he's
new up
over
and
doing
comer with
X Men or
Marvel.
whatever. So,
Blade as well,
and
I
he had
think.
kind of blatantly said they didn't take the source material seriously. And Henry Cavill, as we know, is a passionate fan, especially when it
He
comes
is
to
a
gaming and
stickler,
stuff. So, yeah.
stickler
So
for the law.
honestly, I think they were deviating so much from what he felt was the source material or his usefulness to where he probably figured, fuck it. And he's got
Mm.
Highlander and other things going on that he don't need it. To him,
Yeah,
I'm sure Highlander's the same kind of thing for him, and he's the star there, and he'll actually be in the movie, so that's
he'll
always
be
a plus.
Connor McLeod. Although I
Yep,
always thought he'd be a good Kurgan, to be honest. But they may make an
not
exception with
bad.
Connor McLeod as well. So yeah, what you're, I mean, Paulie, what did you think? Did this come out of left field for you? Was this sort of like, are you shocked? Do you like The Witcher? What's your deal?
Um, I'm really a normie on The Witcher. I
Yeah,
mean,
but did you
it,
watch the
it,
series?
I watched. I think I watched the first season. There's a lot of chi-chis, a lot of slaying and chicks and witchcraft and all that stuff. I don't know. It was fun.
Hmm.
Toss a coin to your Witcher. All that stuff was fun. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but
When,
I haven't watched season 2. Now back to your
well, yeah,
question.
not
Yeah,
that
I
much of a
mean,
fan of it, then basically.
I guess not. I mean, yeah, it was. I was. I don't know why. I remember that season 1 started off
Hmm.
really slow, and then episode 5 like really like locked in. So I don't know
Yeah,
why I never revisited season 2. But with this
that's fair
news,
enough.
I mean, Henry's the man. We talked about this last week. So
Hmm. Yeah.
their
Nick,
loss, their loss.
huge loss, huge
Yep.
loss actually. So Nick, what are your thoughts on this?
So I'm kind of in the same boat as Paulie here on this. Like I watched the first season, but I didn't watch the second season. Coach watched the second season. He loves the
Hmm.
series. I liked season
Yeah.
1. I liked Henry Cavill in that role. And this is a huge blow to that series because I think a lot of people are going to end up leaving because I thought he did a good job playing that role in that show. So, I mean, they already got a replacement for him, but it's just not going to be the same for fans that
Hmm.
love this show moving forward, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what interesting note is that you guys checked out after season 1, right? Like, I mean, that says a lot. That speaks volumes. And even though you're a fan of, you like Henry Cavill and things like that, but you still checked out. But him being the highlight of it, and I think you guys checking out is probably indicative of why most people are so well, one, up in arms, but also why most people checked out was because he wasn't really in it. I do just have to address this real quick. Loads of people seem new to this Highlander news. I did videos on this back when it actually first was announced. So Henry Cavill is working with, he's going to be the Highlander, right? He's going to be in the new Highlander. It's Highlander remake. And I
Yeah,
think it's with Chad Stileski, one of
is
the
it?
guys. I
Yeah,
think
one of
it's Chad
the
Stileski,
John Wick guys. Yeah,
one of the John Wick guys. Yeah. So it's Stileski or the other one. So for those that don't know, I have done some videos on it. You can search for it, but there's not been that much news, right? The news is basically they're going to do a remake. They're looking for their Connor McLeod. And then Henry Cavill basically said, "Yeah, I'm going to be Connor McLeod." So that's kind of where we're at. We don't really know
well,
what
he
else
was
is happening
supposed to
with it.
start shooting in April, but I don't know what happened.
Probably The
That
Witcher.
didn't. Could have been, or I think it maybe have been he got sick or whatever it was.
Mm.
I also found that they were going back for rewrites, so it could have been the script needed some work.
Yeah, true. Yeah, well, because do you want to do a shot-for-shot remake? How do you adapt it further, evolve it,
Right.
that sort of
And
thing?
that's
So
the
just
thing.
for
In
those
this
that weren't
case,
aware.
Yeah, in this case, at least they don't have to fall into the trappings of Highlander 2 and actually set it up for at least a possible future.
Yes.
Basically.
Well, yeah. Right. So just to clear that up for those that were like, "What? Highlander?" Yeah, Highlander is a thing. But let's talk about this. So this is a Forbes article, and this notes what we were talking about, basically why he left. Not this one. So I've got another one there. Basically revealing why he left, which was all to do with the writers having an actual hatred for the source material, an actual hatred. So, and that's important when you realize how much of a stickler Henry Cavill is, which is in this paragraph here, which we'll get to in a moment. But this is what Beau DeMayo said. Now, Beau DeMayo, they say he's a former producer. I don't know if he was a producer. Maybe, but he's definitely one of the writers at the very least, because he's a writer and he's not a small fry. You know, he's an up and coming writer. He's working with Marvel on a lot of things now. So pretty actually up there. So for him to come out and say this, says, I've been on show, namely The Witcher, where some of the writers were not or actively disliked the books and games, even actively mocking the source material. It's a recipe for disaster and bad morale. Fandom as a litmus test checks egos and makes all the long nights worth it. You have to respect the work before you're allowed to add to its legacy, which I heard this and I was like, you know what? I got a newfound respect for Beau DeMayo. Just saying that alone was staggeringly good. But what do you guys make of that? These are writers laughing at the source material, mocking the source material, mocking the books, mocking the games. And one, they're working on the show. Why would you even I mean, I know it's just a gig, but why would you take it if you think it's so repugnant you're going to laugh at it?
Are these the same writers as Rings of Power and She-Hulk? Or
Yeah, maybe.
get a 3-for-1 deal here? The 3-for-1 Hollywood writers deal. They're not really writers. They're from Twitter. And you know, they don't really know shit about anything as far as comic books, but they'll like, hey, we're really cheap. Here's my GoFundMe. Either pay for my bills or I can write for you. And that's what's going on. You know, this is not even, these guys aren't even writers with a capital W. Come on now.
Yeah. Nick, you sound like you wanted to add to some of that as well there.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. The people involved in this project, if the writers felt that way, why they would even continue on the project. Like if I was running a company and running a project and somebody was doing that, I would literally find somebody else and tell them to kick rocks.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't respect the material that you're writing, then how do you expect the viewers to respect what you're doing? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's sort of like, to use another example, what's her face? The secretary who's doing the Acolyte, Tom.
Yeah.
Leslie Headland.
Yeah, Leslie Headland.
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't really know Star Wars, and she talked about getting writers and people to work on the project that don't know anything about it. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? You know, and in this case also, why would you have writers on here that feel that way about the material that they're writing? It literally makes no sense to me at all.
Right. I mean, there's no set rule that says you have to be a fan to work on something, right? Like, but at the same time, you shouldn't mock it, and you should definitely learn what makes people like it. I mean, that's kind of what your job is if you get hired for this. Like, my go-to example is always Nicholas Meyer with Star Trek, right? He didn't like Star Trek. He never really watched it, but he had worked in other, you know, pre-existing character worlds. So he kind of got an idea of what Star Trek was. As soon as he grasped the concept, he's like, "Oh yeah, I can run with this," you know. Yeah. And he took it seriously, obviously. And then he's written and been a part of the 3 main Star Trek movies that most people like. So right there you go, is a great example of somebody not necessarily being a fan, but being able to work in a universe, but he also respected it, right? There's a difference there. He respected what came before, the lore, what it meant to the fans, and that's why, Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 4, and Star Trek 6 are the ones that the fans gravitate towards, because he not only are they good stories, but they pay respect to the characters and the lore.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, because it's like, they're hiring. They should be hiring people on their talent, right? Regardless of what the material is, and just like what Tom says, it's like they come in, they weren't really fans of the source or the original material, but they're talented writers, so they're going to do their due diligence. They're going to create something and keep that going. Going back to this writers with the lowercase w, it's like they're hired now because they have been pushing an agenda in their work. That's just what it is, guys. And it's you can see it in all the all the television that's been coming out lately. So yeah, it's breathtaking. I was watching just what how you broke down the latest Lord of the Rings fiasco, with those guys talking about their show. Like, they know everything and all these Easter eggs, and the language of what was written. It's like mamadas. You know what that means? Mamadas means bullshit. You don't know shit about the source, and it's so evident. And so that's just the same thing here, Nate.
Yeah. And I think this gives me a lot more respect for Bo Dameron, and you have to respect the work. You have to respect the work before you're allowed to add to its legacy. I love that. I think that's great. But the reason why this matters so much with Henry Cavill, and the reason why he left The Witcher, is because of this statement here. And this statement, there's a lot actually in here that is kind of not immediately apparent, right? So he says, as far as the preparation goes, coming into this, I wanted the character to have a closer relationship to the character in the books. I wanted him to be more book accurate. And so it's more to do with making sure and campaigning. He had to campaign for him to sound more intellectual and philosophical, and to have an emotional side as well, rather than just be a grumpy snowman.
Well, yeah, because the show's not about him.
Henry Cavill had to campaign to have Geralt of Rivia as a nuanced character rather than a boring archetype. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? He had to and by the way, he had to campaign to get that. And then he says, every day I was pushing this stuff. As far as prep goes, at the present, he can be a little uncommunicative, and obviously, and I'm still working on that, obviously. So he had to push to get what little we had in the show. So yeah, no wonder he left. No wonder. You got people writing it that absolutely hate the material, and then he's having a campaign to get any semblance of...
I mean, it's Henry Cavill. He shouldn't have to campaign, right? Like,
no, you should just be like, oh, you're the star? Right, okay. You want to do this? Right, okay.
Oh, well, let's see how we can make that work. Exactly, right?
Yeah, that's got to be really frustrating for him as an actor, especially since he's a fan of the source material anyways, and read the books and knows the character, and then they give him something else that doesn't match up. That had to have been frustrating for him.
Massively. But you'd think as well, like, he was one of the main reasons that show even got greenlit. Like, he was kind of hassling them to make it,
right?
If I remember rightly.
The general audience outside of gamers had no idea what a fuck a Witcher was.
Yeah.
Before that. Yeah. Like, Henry Cavill brought eyeballs to that show that it never would have before.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me, I just read an interview with the director of Nightmare Before Christmas, and he was bitching about how it's Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. It's like, yeah, well, motherfucker wrote it and designed all the goddamn characters. It was basically work for hire. Just be happy you've been able to create a career after that. That was a step up. Instead, you're sitting here griping because Tim Burton got all the fucking notoriety. Duh! Because it was Tim Burton. It's the same thing here.
First writing gig or what?
Well, no, he didn't direct the actual movie. Most people think Tim Burton directed The Nightmare Before Christmas. It was an animation director, the guy who went on to do Coraline or whatever, and James and the Giant Peach and all that kind of stuff. But like, really, at the end of the day, it was more or less a work for hire job for him. He was coming in to facilitate Tim Burton's vision and put that on the screen, basically. That's it. Like, to me, like, you're griping about the leg up you got in the industry to get where you're at now. If it wasn't for that movie, you'd have never got to make Coraline or any of the other stuff that you have been able to make that you got notoriety for. The Witcher's the same thing here. There's a buttloads of soccer moms and you know, an empty nest women who had no fucking clue what this thing was before Henry Cavill was a part of it. But let me tell you what, they love it because of him. and their loss, I mean, they're lucky they got one of the Hemsworth boys to stand in for him, but I don't know how much that's going to really help.
Well, see, the thing is, I think what's sad about this, right? Like, unequivocally, the viewership for The Witch is going to tank now, right? We know it's going to tank. It just is. I don't think the studio is banking on it tanking quite as much as it's going to, but it is. It's going to fall off a cliff because I don't think the studio or anyone else is really quite acutely aware with how much of a draw Henry Cavill actually is. He's one of the few people that can actually be a draw. I mean, you've got to look at it from a perspective of, you know, everyone is like, yeah, Henry Cavill definitely come back as Superman. And yet him as Superman, he's given us quite, you know, they've been mediocre kind of films. Realistically, if you're looking at it, you know, objectively, they have been kind of mediocre films. Man of Steel, not universally loved. I quite like that film, but his appearances as Superman have not been stellar. And yet people are so forgiving of him because they like him and they like him in the role. They're like, yeah, please come back. And that's, you know, that's a testament to his charisma, his star power. And it's going to be the same thing here. The studio doesn't know quite what they have. It's going to go, and they're going to go, shit. But they're going to blame Liam Hemsworth, which I think is is you know, the true sad thing here, is they'll blame Liam Hemsworth for it falling off a cliff rather than them being idiots and pushing away the main star.
Yeah, which is sad because if the writing was actually worth a shit and the show was good, it shouldn't matter.
No.
Did you watch the second season, Tom or Nate?
No, I've not watched it at all.
What'd you think of the second season?
It was better because there was more of him. That was the thing. It was more coherent because season one was very much all over the place, timelines, distances, people, and they were all kind of building to this convergence. The season two felt a bit more cohesive, but I'm not familiar with the source material, but it felt more cohesive, you know, worked together. So I think they're shit out of luck with this, and no wonder he left. No wonder people mocking the material. Yeah, no wonder he left. No wonder. But I know.
No, and the timing of the announcement was just to make it look like he did it for Superman. That's all.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So you raise a very good point. So Liam Hemsworth, I think, is at the moment currently in Australia shooting a film called Land of the Bad. So this would have been, I think he's in. I know a Hemsworth brother is just one of the Hemsworths, but he's not. You know, he's not around anyway. Like, he's on shoot at the moment because it's with a director that I've interviewed here on the channel before, William Eubank. So, you know, I sort of chit chat to William and sort of know what he's up to and stuff. He's obviously doing that. So he's not around anyway. He's working really long days. So it is very much a timing thing. Can you imagine having to like grovel or at least announce it at a certain point and just sort of be like, oh, when can we actually release it? Oh, Henry, you can't really say anything. Oh, God, what an absolute shit show. What an absolute shit show. What a joke.
Yeah, I'm curious how long this has kind of been in the works of him leaving and how long they've known that he was leaving the show.
I'd imagine a while.
Yeah, I would think so.
This deal with Liam was done weeks ago, if not more. Right? And we've got enough proof now that from what I had heard is probably true that this deal with Cavill wasn't signed until late last week. So
yeah,
or before the announcement. I mean, the week before. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, we'd both been saying that, hadn't we?